Welcome to episode 207 of Girl Take the Lead, where each week we explore womanhood and leadership. And I'm your host, Yo Canny. Ziem Neubert, Executive Director of Project Cornerstone at the YMCA of Silicon Valley, joins us to discuss the topic of loneliness. Ziem leads an amazing team working with school and community partners to support youth social and emotional well-being. Over 20 years of experience in education, serving as a teacher, coordinator, assistant principal, and principal, has been instrumental in supporting her work in building relationships and driving the vision for Project Cornerstone. Ziem is passionate about fostering positive skills, relationships, experiences, and honest conversations to create safe, caring, and equitable communities in Silicon Valley and beyond. Today, Project Cornerstone works with over 180 schools, reaching 62,000 students annually with the help of over 4,000 volunteers. If this topic of loneliness is of interest to you and you'd like more, Ziem has offered all the resources she researched in the show notes. These are the topics we covered: loneliness defined, social media connectedness and loneliness, misconceptions around loneliness, friendships and different kinds of connections, letting go of friendships, and 3 ways we take care of ourselves: assess, plan, and act. Enjoy the listen. Here you go. Susan, welcome to Girl Take the Lead. I'm so excited to have you here and for us to discuss this topic, which could be a little seasonal in nature since we're going to try and post this around the holidays, but it's not just a seasonal topic, is it? It's all the time that we have to look at loneliness.
Thank you so much, Yolanda. I first of all, I just want to say thank you for having me here. It's such an honor. I'm really excited. Um, I'm excited to talk about this. And
Yeah,
like we were just mentioning before, it's kind of strange thinking about that we can actually have a podcast talking about loneliness. I'm not sure we would have been able to do that years ago.
right.
I think it is kind of coming out of COVID, and one of the silver linings is we are more aware. Things existed before COVID, but we are just in this. I think the norm is it's okay to talk about things like this and stress and anxiety and being resilient and all old topics, but just um, taking the stigma away from it.
Yeah, good. So, Zim, why don't we start with you telling our listeners and our viewers a little bit about you? Because I know I got to know you, but I'd love for them to know you as well.
I'd be happy to. My name is Zim. I'm Vietnamese American, born in Vietnam, but raised and lived most of my life here in the US. I'm the executive director of YMCA Project Cornerstone, which is a movement or initiative within the Y, with a mission to create caring environments, schools, and communities where all kids are going to feel like they have a sense of belonging and they
Mm,
feel valued, respected, and known. But my background is I've been in education. I was served in the public school system for about 20 years, having been a teacher, an administrator, and my last gig was being a principal years ago. And it was during when I stepped back and took some time off that I started volunteering for Project Cornerstone. And then I never turned back. Um, I am a mother of two. And when I reflect about all the things I've done, whether it's education or nonprofit, I feel like my true calling really was about fighting for youth and their families and having a lens of equity, um, and just and always learning. I'm a lifelong learner. I know that's a cliche, but I'm always learning regardless if we're doing parenting workshops or talking with you or just hanging around with my kids, I'm always learning. I have so much to learn. And when I discovered Project Cornerstone, it was just a blessing. And I'm always trying to be that better parent, which lots of opportunities to fail. Having two kids who are now, young adult and a teenager, and I'm always practicing on them to the point where they get tired of it, but I know they love it. They know they're just not telling me, not yet, but they do actually quote me on things. And I'm sure someday, they'll be going to therapy because of me. But
That's
that's
okay.
good because I want them to have people to talk to and give them something worthwhile to talk about. So that's who I am, and my kids are biracial, married to a German. So there's a lot of that in how I show up. I show up in all those ways.
So wonderful.
Yeah.
And you and I work together on the Giving Circle. And so I think Girl Scouts has a partnership with Project Cornerstone as well. And that's how I got to know you, which um, you guys, I got to tell you, I've seen her in action with a couple teens, and she is such a great example of active listening and really listening. It was just so wonderful to see. So I was just like, oh, I hope she'll come on the show because we'll have such a good talk about this. But you really do show and be what you want, in terms of connecting. So this is just perfect. And I'm glad you're here. So thank you.
Thank you. Can I share something?
Sure.
This morning, as I was getting ready and putting on my makeup, I purposely put on waterproof mascara because I'm like, I'm going to be talking to Yo. She'll probably get me to be really vulnerable at some point, just in case. Let's just make sure it's waterproof. It's such an honor, and thank you
Yeah.
so much. And
Oh,
it's it's to you. Like
oh, that's
I'm
terrific.
just blessed to be here. Thank you.
Well, let's start by helping our listeners understand what we think loneliness is. And as defined by mental health professionals, it's the gap between the level of connectedness that we want and what we have. And it's not the same as social isolation, which is the measure of the number of connections. I know you have some thoughts on that. It's a subjective feeling. And because we can have a lot of contacts and still feel very lonely, and we can be perfectly content if we're by ourselves. And one of our faves, Brene Brown, says it's the place we go when we're searching for connections. And at the heart of it is the absence of meaningful social interaction. And that could be an intimate relationship, a friendship, like you brought up, family gatherings. It could be something in the community or even work connections that we're working for. And that our brains and our bodies are set up to be social. Um, One point, I know in my previous episodes, I've covered some thoughts about um, loneliness and some of the statistics that, and then the book actually that Dr. Murthy wrote. But there's some more recent research that I wanted to share with our listeners. And this was done by the American Psychiatric Association, and they found 43% of American adults said their levels of loneliness had not changed since COVID. 25% said they were lonelier, and 23% said they were less lonely. I think that's amazing, don't you, Zim? I mean,
Yeah, it's amazing. It's very profound. Um, but what I grab onto of all that is that definition of loneliness. It really, since you and I have started working on this project for Giving Circle, it's really been prevalent in my mind. I mean, I have to tell you, almost every day I am assessing my loneliness, and but using this term, I love this definition that is actually the gap,
mhm.
because I feel like I can really go down that rabbit hole if I
Yeah.
want to, right?
Mhm.
We're so used to being isolated during COVID. I'm still, right now I'm zooming from home. I have the option to go in the office, but I've been used to, kind of being by myself. I love my team and I love getting together with them, but we've trained ourselves to be alone.
Mhm.
And alone doesn't have to be loneliness.
Mhm.
And when I think about, but I'm blessed. I have choices and I have a good support system, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like if you were already feeling lonely before COVID, oh my goodness, like what did that isolation do to you?
Yeah.
And depending on your circumstances after COVID, like do you have the time, the energy, the resources to reconnect with people?
Mhm.
We're so blessed. And yeah, we can text people. There are people I know who don't use phones or don't have a way of texting, or they're trying to still, bounce back with their job and so forth. Do they have enough time and energy to have a support system other than going to work if they have a job, right?
Right.
It's a lot. And if you just, you can really, it can be a lot. And so I'm
Yeah.
really happy that we are going to unpack some of this and give
Mhm.
people some strategies of how to overcome and reduce loneliness. But one of the things I saw in the research that I would like to point out is that an amount of loneliness is okay. Like we're not trying to get rid of loneliness. It
Mhm.
reminds me of when we work around stress and stress management. We need stress in our lives. If we didn't have the stress, then if we never experienced it, we would not be able to survive. For example, fight, flight, or
Mhm.
freeze.
Mhm.
Right? It's
Mhm.
a biological thing that happens in our body. So we feel the stress or something coming at us, a train, a car, whatever, and we move out of the way, or a tiger
Mhm.
running at us. Right? We can't sit there and go, "Oh, what is this?" We need to like move out of the way or figure it out or do something, and that is stress. And if we didn't have that, we wouldn't be able to survive.
Mhm.
And it's the amount of stress over time, it's chronic stress that becomes anxiety. And if we don't have a way to deal with that, then it can really harm us physically and mentally. And
Mhm.
same with loneliness. I think of it as if we've never experienced sadness, how would we truly understand happiness?
Right.
Right?
Right. Mhm.
And I think when you feel loneliness, based on this definition of Dr. Murphy's, of the gap of our desire of how much connection we want versus the reality of how much connection we have. If our system is saying, "Hey, there's something going on here. You want this, but you're not getting this." I think it's good for us to then feel lonely and go, "Okay, maybe
Mhm.
it'll kick me into gear to do something, to pick up that phone, to reach out to someone or call an old friend that I haven't spoken to for a long time." So I think it's okay, but I think the chronic loneliness, going into depression and not knowing what to do, that is what can be harmful.
Yeah. Well, I think you bring up too the paradox that even though we are so connected, right? Here we are, we're on a podcast. We have social media options. We've got Zoom. We've got everything going for us. But it, loneliness continues to rise. And I love this one finding that I saw that, and it was done earlier this year, that 54% of those interviewed said they found the like social media connections meaningful, but 46% found them superficial. And that to me just sort of went, oh, yeah. So it's not all bad, but a lot of people don't find it as meaningful.
Hmm.
So I thought that was interesting that there's this ability, this way to connect, but yet it's not as meaningful for us. Um, that was one thing that stood out for me in the research. Were there some other things for
Yeah.
you?
And on that note, I think it's the choices we make. I see social media and the technology as brilliant and wonderful, but more on the convenient side. When I
Mm,
think of loneliness and reaching out to people and connections, I think of, oh, thank goodness I have a text. I can text people, and because I don't know if I have enough time in the day to have a long, meaningful conversation with somebody all the time,
Hmm.
right? Um, but I have a rule, especially with a certain friend of mine I can think of, or actually at least two of them, where if we're texting each other back and forth, and after X number of texts back and forth, I'm like, okay, no, why are we sitting there doing this long text? This is when we're like, okay, pick up the phone and call. This just happened to me a couple of days ago, and my friend's like, "Well, can we just call?" And
Yeah.
same with a relative that I had. So it's convenient, it's fast, and at least people let somebody know that I'm thinking of you, but then you can make a choice of like, is that the only way you're going to reach out? And same with social media. I have Facebook, but I'm really horrible at keeping up with Facebook.
Hmm.
So every once in a while I will get on, and you'll know that, okay, Zim's online right now on Facebook, because I will like things that happened 3 months ago to people. Because I don't want to be tied to it. But
Hmm.
at the same time, like, thank goodness, if I didn't have Facebook, I would not know at least 20 people in my past. I grew up in Iowa. Friends from the past. There's no way I would know what they were doing. So it's kind of superficial, but not really. Like, I see what they're doing, so I'm kind of connected. And if I
Yeah.
really, and then if there's a reunion, so of course, then you get to see face to face. But it's good and bad, and I think it's about how you choose it, when you choose it,
Hmm.
and when you know that how it serves you.
Right.
I think that's important.
Well, I also think that there's a lot of misconceptions, right? You mentioned one of them, that shame comes up, that we should be shameful about being lonely. Um, and yet it's part of being human.
Mhm.
Um, what are some other ones that hit you?
I was reading an article talking about misconceptions, and I think one of the things that stuck out was the connectedness of loneliness and friendship was the article, how friendship can be one of the not fixes, but one of the ways to overcome loneliness. And one of the misconceptions is the more friends you have, the merrier. You won't be lonely if you have more friends. Like, quantity matters. And I don't think it took the article to tell me that, but it was nice to have some validation on that. So remember that definition of loneliness being the gap between your desired level of connectedness
Mhm.
versus what your actual level is. That's the key. So if I am a person with 50 friends, but my desire is actually to have 100 friends, well, I could still be lonely, right? But if my
Mhm.
comfort level, the way my personality is, or my circumstances, if I'm happy with, I just want like 5 good friends, or 3 even, and I have 4, well, I've already, like,
Yeah.
met what I want. So I think that's a misconception, the more the merrier. And I think that's really good for people who might be comparing themselves to others, especially on social media. Like, I don't care that I don't have that many friends on Facebook, but they're
Yeah.
the people I want to connect with. And then related to that, one of the other misconceptions is that introverts are generally lonelier than extroverts. And you can see where I'm going with that, right? It's the same. If I'm the party social person, life of the party, um, it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm not lonely, right? And I think it depends on, we all need alone time, introverts and extroverts. Maybe an introvert might need a little bit more time to recharge and get grounded. um, but our perception of what the ideal social life looks like depends on many factors, right?
Yeah.
Including our level of extroversion, and maybe it's the size of our family, maybe our birth order, me being the youngest of 6, but having a huge gap between myself and my older siblings. I was a lot of time alone because nobody would play with me.
I had the same thing. My sister was 7 years older than me.
Yeah, yeah,
So
and
I
my
was
oldest sister's 13 years older than I am,
13.
so she was like a second mother.
Yeah.
So no, I didn't have to go to therapy about being the youngest. But it just depends on your circumstance, your situation, your biological makeup. And
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that if you're an introvert that you necessarily are lonelier than somebody else.
One of the things that hit me too was that I had always thought that loneliness was, something that would happen to you as you got old,
Yes.
right? And then it only affected somebody over 80. But the research and everything says it happens all the time. And our teens are especially vulnerable. Um, and I went, oh, this is so different than I thought, you know?
Yeah. It broke my heart when I read that,
Yeah.
because I have a team, at home, and I work with teams as well. And yeah, I mean, this I feel like it should be the best time of their lives. Well, besides all the teenage puberty and all that stuff, but it's like it's so sad to hear about that generation coming up. What are they called now? They are Gen. What are we?
Well, they're
We're
Gen
Gen.
Zers.
Yeah. What are they?
Gen Zers.
Gen. Yeah, Gen Zers. I get all the whole names mixed up, right? Um, just all the stuff that they have to deal with. I
Yeah.
think it's different, instead of our grandparents saying, "Oh, you had it so good back in my days," I feel like we can't say that anymore. I think it's our world is so different.
Yeah. It
um
is.
and I really feel for them, and I
Yeah.
really, you know I have more years to work, and I feel like I'm one of my missions is just we need to leave our world a better place for our kids.
Yeah, definitely.
I feel like we've destroyed so much, and I don't know. Sorry for going off the tangent there, but
Uh,
yeah, it is true. You feel like a lonely people in nursing homes and whatever, right?
Right.
But like you
Right.
look at these kids and they're like they are they are so connected, and yet they're so lonely.
Yeah. So, how do you think friendship works to help everyone? I mean, I think that you brought it up about the teens, but it's also just about adults and everybody and friendship.
Well, we are, human beings are social beings, right? So, regardless of what that desire is, we still need to connect. And friendships, I don't know. I hope I'm answering this, but I was thinking that like lessons learned that I've learned about friendships, and I feel like there's different kinds of friendship. I feel like when you grow up and you might, if you think about a romantic relationship, there's this myth about the soulmate, the one person, the one
Hmm.
relationship who you're going to spend the rest of your life with. I started thinking about friendships. Like, we're so lucky about friendships because there isn't one kind of friendship.
Oh,
And
good
there, for
point.
me, I
Yeah.
don't feel like there's an ultimate goal of I'm going to get this friend, kind of like when some people, might think like I'm going to end up with this partner. And to me, there's such richness and hope in when you think about friendship, and especially as you get older, we have so many choices of the kinds of friendships that because you have work friends, and you have best friends, and then you have friends that maybe you have some things in common, but they're not,
Hmm.
maybe not necessarily that every time you have a problem you go to. And so there's a spectrum of friendships, and I think
Right.
that's like really exciting. And I have to say, recently, it's so weird that this is happening. I do believe like things happen for a reason. The reason why I'm sitting with you here, it has been a journey. I would have to say, I can't remember now, 6 months ago or maybe a year ago. I went up and down with not necessarily diagnosed depression, but just definitely like, okay, I'm in a slump. Work might be going really well, but there's a lot of stress and blah, 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 and, different kinds of relationship stuff and family and all this thing. And kind of starting feeling sorry for myself, like, what am I doing? Where am
Hmm.
I going? And is this what I want to be doing? Um, and I started going down this rabbit hole about friendship. And I literally started thinking, I have no friends.
Hmm.
And I was like, and I didn't think about this definition. I hadn't read this yet. And I was like, oh my goodness, I have a few friends, love them. But what happens if they move away? What happens if blah, blah, blah? What happens, like what's wrong with me? Like, why don't I have, like, why am I not, going out and doing this stuff? And I started judging myself and my friendships with other people. And I think partly because, I know some people who are really, really social and they're always, always busy. Or if I, happen to be on Facebook and I see people posting about this and that, and I started measuring myself against their
Hmm.
standards. And again, I don't even know, they might even be lonely, right? But and then I started thinking, well, what am I going to do? How am I going to make friends at my age? And we feel what I've learned is we assume that our kids, I don't know how many of your readers or listeners have kids at what age, but I remember going to events with my kids when they were younger, and they were forced to go because they were too young to stay home. But they didn't know anybody, but our friends had kids,
Right, right.
right? And as an adult, I was just like, yeah, kids make friends. I mean, that's what they do, right? Friendships are important. So I would take them to these parties and get togethers, and I literally would say, go, like, go be with these
Yeah,
kids, right?
yeah.
Go make friends. And one time, my son looked at me at the party and said, Mom, stop making me make friends. And I was like, what? And then he said, I believe he was only, I don't know, 9 or something, maybe 10.
Yeah.
And he said, if I tell you when you go to a party to go over there and make friends with strange adults, how would you feel?
Uh,
And, that was not the first time my son has kind of,
yeah, I love your kids. I totally
and I
do.
have to say from then on, I stopped because I'm like,
Mhm.
yeah, like we just assume it's so easy to make friends when you're kids, and we just assume, well, you're that age and you're that age and go be together, right? Basically because the adults want to be by themselves and not be bothered by their kids. And we feel like, okay, as long as they're getting along, it's fine. And then fast forward, same thing with I had a situation with my daughter, and I did get her permission. She's younger than her brother, and when she was around, I don't know, fifth grade, sixth grade, or something like that, that kind of awkward age, she had, I would say, a close friend, maybe almost a best friend at the time. There were sleepovers, play dates, shop, a lot, whole bunch of stuff. They had a lot in common. And then all of a sudden, they became frenemies, right? And there was a lot of drama, a lot, so much drama. And as a parent, I really had to think, not just twice, think multiple times of how do I set boundaries,
Mhm.
and boundaries in a different way. Boundaries for her to help her set boundaries around this friendship. But for me, boundaries for me as a parent, like what kind of parent do I want to be?
Mhm.
Because it broke my heart watching her go through this. And as a parent, your natural tendency is like, I'm going to fix it for her. I'm going to
Right.
stop this girl from acting like this, as if I have any control. Um, so I actually did, and my work with Project Cornerstone really helped because I was doing parenting workshops. I'm like, oh, I got to like walk the talk now and be that parent. Um,
Don't you hate that?
I know, I hate that. So I decided, and I sat down with her, and I remember thinking the most important thing is I want her to feel like she has a voice and choice, because that's what I'm training parents all the time. So I got to give her voice and choice. So we unpacked it. I told her, I used I statements. I told her how I felt, was I was not projecting stuff, and I asked her about how she felt. Really hard practicing listening, active listening, because I definitely had opinions about the
Mhm.
girl and the family. And then we came up with a plan together. And I checked
Mhm.
in with her, like, would you be okay with this? What do you, how would you like to do this? So we decided, we met with the mom and the daughter at a neutral place, and we talked about it. And I just helped facilitate, but I was trying not to be her parent. I was just trying to be this, caring adult for both of them. And I made up my mind beforehand, which was so hard, was that if I put this out there and ask her to make a choice at the end of the conversation, and she chooses not to be friends with this person anymore, would I be okay with it? Not that it's my place to be okay, but I needed to start with me first, right? And I made
Mm-hmm.
up my mind that it's if I'm gonna say it's your decision, I gotta live by the decision, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I gotta help get some boundaries. So we talked about it. They were put it on the table. This is what she said. This is what they da da da. They didn't agree. My daughter was still really offended. And in the end, I did ask, so would you like to still be friends with this person?
Mm-hmm.
Yolanda, she looked at her and she said, no.
Oh
And,
God.
and part of me is like, oh no. And then, but part of me is like, yes, like she's this girl who can speak up and in front of
Mm-hmm.
this other adult, right? Not me, the mom, and saying,
Mm-hmm.
no, I don't want to be friends with this person. And she said, why? And it goes back to some of the research that I think there was an article that we read that talked about friendship for girls, and some of the key points were trust. I'm saying it out of order. Something like
Mm-hmm.
trust, loyalty, emotional support, um, mutual understanding, and having things in common, shared interests, right?
Right.
And it was very obvious that the trust was broken. And for my daughter, that was on top of her list. I could see over the years. And she's like, I'm not doing it. So then the only thing I wrapped it up was, well, but you have classes together and so can you both agree to just be cordial? Like there's no more of this drama and gossip. And there's just, when you see each other, you don't have to be best friends. And it sounds like one of you doesn't even want to be friends at all, but you can say hi back, or you can, if you ever have to work together for a school project, you're going to do that. Right.
So terrific.
And that was, I don't know if I answered your question about
Mm-hmm.
friendship, but that, yeah. And I see the importance of having friendships, not just to help with loneliness, but there's so many skills and lessons learned when you work through friendships, right? Good or
Yeah.
bad. And the
Like
back to the choices again, it's like, and even at that young age, I love it. I don't know if I was able to do that at her age. She was able to make choices like, I don't need to be around this person.
so what I saw in your daughter and what I think a lot of us do is we need to sometimes clear out some of those friendships that aren't servicing us. And so we create new room for new friends to come in who fill the gap, who we
Mhm.
feel connected to. And I think that's the opportunity. And one of the ways in which we address loneliness through friendship is that, yeah, we can let go of some of the toxic ones we might have. But I also love when you said that there are different kinds of friendships. Like we could have friends, like a lot of my sorority sisters and I got together after 50 years. And I was nervous about going and showing up and will I be judged? And am I young enough looking? All of that. But we were able to pick up like 50 years later. And even though we shared the history, it was enough, and doesn't mean we need to be best friends going forward, but that we appreciate that about each other. And that was a real gift.
Yeah.
So,
It
yeah.
reminds me of, those high school reunions, and we won't share what year we're on here.
No, I just gave mine away. So there we
Yeah.
are.
Um, but I remember, I think I mentioned this to you casually one time, is that these reunions, the stereotypical movies about reunions, right?
Yeah.
Like there's the popular, the cheerleader, the blah blah blah. Where are they now? What are they doing? I remember joined on Facebook. We have reunions, and somebody who was in charge of getting all of us together. Thank goodness she's doing it. I remember the first couple reunions, actually, probably the first one. I went, but I went with a small group of friends. I didn't really feel like showing up by myself, call it insecurity or whatever, but I knew I wanted to, reconnect, but I also wanted to make sure there were people that, I definitely wanted to hang out with. But I definitely made judgments as I was going through the Facebook page and who's showing up and stuff. Um, and maybe it's trauma loosely,
Right.
but like, oh, there's that person who turned me down. There's the person,
Right.
and all this. And definitely going back to the whole click,
Yeah.
the world
Yeah.
of clicks that back then. And then thinking, it's so weird. I felt I had a negative feeling. Like these people now are connecting on Facebook. And I was really offended at first, going, hey, you, I didn't write this, but like
Yeah.
you were in this one group that, and you had no time of day for this person over here. And probably, it's not bullying, but like you probably like definitely did not include certain people. But now you're all Facebook friends and
Yeah.
sharing stuff like you are friends. And then, but then after a while, I'm like, Zim, you're the only one with the problem here. Like, just get over it,
Exactly.
right?
Right.
Maybe
You
these
do.
maybe these people let go, and like you need to let go of those stereotypes,
Yeah.
and hopefully maybe everybody's grown up. Maybe you haven't
Yeah.
grown up. But like they definitely were okay with talking to each other on Facebook at least.
Yeah.
But I had this narrow, kind of like tunnel
Yeah.
vision there.
I think you're pointing to that we have to like expand and move beyond and recognize, right? That's one of the things maybe we could talk a little bit about ways in which we take care of ourselves, because I know you've got three thoughts on that. And I think that might fall into our first one, right? Assess.
Mhm. Um, I do want to point out something in research that I loved. I think it must have been Dr. Murthy's article. He's so great, and something about how he said friendship is really important to combat loneliness or maintaining friendships, but it's also not just it's up to the system that we need to reconstruct how our society, at least here in the United States, view or handle connections. And he had that, I think, an example about in the UK, where what was it called? They called it a happy bench or
Yeah.
happy
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 bench.
to chat. And it reminds me of schools when we have buddy benches, right? So buddy
Hmm.
benches at school are if you don't have somebody to play with, you sit there and and the whole school, you're training the kids to say, hey, you see somebody on the buddy bench, and even though they're not in your circle, you go over there and you ask them to come play with you. So I think it was the UK where they had happy to chat, and they sit there, and I think it said something like sit here if you don't mind people talking to you, or something like that, or stopping by to say hello. And I was like, that is so cool. And I know it's taken off in some other countries too. But
Yep.
I think his point was like, we need to recreate or redesign our cities, our environment, so that it's more conducive to having, making connections.
Yeah. Love that.
So I think you were asking about how can we take care of ourselves, right?
Right.
And restructure so that we can, I think, reconnect and create these friendships and help to reduce loneliness. Um, it goes back, I think, to three steps of starting with yourself. So assess. Like I told you, I've been assessing constantly
Hmm.
about this. And so assess, it could be like, how do you feel? Do you feel lonely? I'll just say I statements. Okay. How do I feel? What is my level of desired connectedness versus my reality? If there is a gap and I want to fix that, I have to start with myself. But I need to know
Hmm.
where I'm at first, right? Stop
Right.
measuring myself against other people. And then a part of that assessment too is, and which I've been doing literally. I'm really good at homework. I love going to school. So since this project began, I actually wrote down names of friends, past and present. And I've actually decided like, who do I want to reconnect with, and who am I ready to let go of?
Hmm.
Right. And there's no right or wrong answer. And I don't share it with anybody. It's just for me. It could be
Right.
in a journal, could be whatever. And then the second step after assess is plan. So what am I going to do about it?
Hmm.
Right. So I'll give you an example. I subscribe to the Calm app, CALM,
Hmm.
for
Hmm.
meditation to help me sleep and so forth. And there's so many choices on there. And one of them is just a quick thing. And I watched something, I think it was this morning, called Be a Shark. And it talks about how sharks actually cannot stand still. I think they will die if I'm not mistaken. They need to be always moving forward. right? And they were talking about moving forward physically, but also moving forward in your life, whatever it is. So after that, it was very, I think it's 30 seconds or something. And then it always allows you, do you want to share? So I often, but I haven't done it recently. So I chose one of my friends who I know is struggling,
Mhm.
and I shared it with her through a text. And the app makes it very easy. I don't work for Calm. And I sent it to her, but I wrote a note saying, I'll be a shark with you.
Oh, that's so sweet.
And it's just a little thing, right? So
Right.
plan, and it leads me to the third thing, which is act.
Mhm.
So assess, plan, act, or implement or do something. And they can be very small,
Yeah,
you know. Yeah.
I love that. Well, I think um, it helps us all take responsibility for where we are
Hmm.
and then take the action. So, listeners, after listening to this, pull out your phone, contact somebody, do something that for somebody that you want to connect with. That would be just so great
If I
because it
may add
comes back
one
to
thing.
you, right? It
Yeah.
comes back to us to help
Mhm.
us.
And then if I may add something to for your listeners as well, is not part of the three steps maybe, but I think with the lens of forgiving yourself, like allowing yourself, I feel like I have a lot of expectations. I can make a list. I can make, if my list of whatever, how many friends and what I want to do and my action plan um fails, it's okay. Like I want to set
Mhm.
myself up for success, but I also know that maybe my target is too high, and my amount of work or amount of, or what I choose, number of hours of day are not changing, right? So it's what I have. So I don't want to, I want to take small steps, but I also want to reach as well. And if it doesn't work out, I'll just try again. I think that's really important. It's a really important way to model for your kids, whether or not you have
Mhm.
kids or, people around you. Um, Model for my other siblings,
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so I try to be creative about it, a little strategic about it, maybe too much, but if I only have number of hours in the day and I want to do this and this and this and this is, and I want to connect with these people. Um, but research shows that, also to help loneliness, you need to do something physical or go outside and do
Mhm.
things like that, right? Well, I'm not
Mhm.
a hiker, but I do like going outside, or I like cooking. I like eating a lot.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
can I, with one of these friends, depending on the level of relationship or how close they are with me, physically and relationship wise, can I invite them to do something with me that can also fill the other buckets, right? So I can get to go outside, or I get to do some cooking, or I get to do whatever, but now I'm connecting with somebody else. So,
That's a great idea.
you can even, there was an article that said, I love this idea. Maybe you connect, maybe decide to watch something together if you're into
Mhm.
Netflix or whatever other Hulu, whatever else. Maybe you're going to find a friend to watch together.
Yeah.
And if you can't, watch separately, but you're always going to have a date to discuss it or something like that.
Yeah. That's so good. I
Just
love that
little clever
idea.
things. Yeah.
So we'll ask our listeners to send us what they do because that would be so cool. I know
I'd love to learn more. Yeah.
my friend and I will watch a football game. We she has my friend Dee Dee has she lives down in Southern California, so it's the Southern California and Northern California teams, and she's always on the Southern California teams, which is very disappointing at times. But we have we have found our way, and we watch together and text each other back and forth watching it. I know we could talk forever, Zim. So, but I'd love for our listeners to know how they can follow you or help you with Project Cornerstone. What are ways that they can do that?
Well, I don't know what, I forget if you put anything, when you put the whole podcast together, but they can definitely follow us on
Mhm.
www.projectcornerstone.org. So all
Mhm.
one word and no, yeah, all no space in between. Um, and I think we're going to be sharing this podcast around December, right? In the middle,
Right.
right before. So I would love that's our campaign time right now that we're just kicking off our 2025 campaign. So we are a nonprofit being part of the Y, and we would love. I would love it if listeners could maybe think about supporting our efforts by donating.
Hmm.
And just to remind people, our mission is to work with kids and adults, giving kids skills such as empathy building and how to create friendships and so forth. And in schools, in particularly, we really work on bullying prevention,
Mm.
and we do also a lot of parenting workshops. So, by the way, one way I remember of reducing loneliness is to have gratitude,
Yes.
right?
And
And this is
generosity.
connected to that, and to me also giving, when you give of yourself and volunteering and so forth. So you can help us by seeing how you can volunteer, but you can also help us by making a donation.
Hmm.
um, and I think it's really empowering when you're on you join people with the same cause, regardless of what organization you believe in.
Yeah.
And we just want to build a kind world is what we're trying to do.
Oh, that's great. So, Zim, what would you tell your 20 something self?
My 20 something self. This is a hard one. I would say my 20-year-old self would be trust the process,
Mm.
create better boundaries.
Oh, that's a great one.
Um, yeah, and I'm thinking about friendship because that's on my mind, but like, create boundaries, let go of some friends back when
Uh-huh.
I was 20. At the same time, in hindsight, it's like I needed to go through some of those hard friendships to be where I
Hmm.
am today. Kind of
Oh.
like, if you never experienced what I said at the beginning,
Hmm.
sadness, how would you know happiness? If I didn't have bad experiences with friendships, how would I appreciate the ones that I have now?
Mm. So great. So I know you went to the website and you picked a card out that spoke to you. Let's tell our listeners which one that was.
I forget the phrase, but it's the lotus one, the lotus
Right.
flower, and I love it because I love the lotus flower. And I don't know if you ever had lotus seeds, that are really yummy. It's a Vietnamese snack. Um, but the color just drew me to it, that
Oh, that's
lavender
great.
color. But it was the saying. Can you
Yeah.
remind me what that saying was again?
Yeah, I think it was I carry you in my heart, or you're always in my heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was really thinking of you know, friends,
Yeah.
but then I was like, I know exactly who I can give this to. And at the same time, it's like, and I need to give that to myself.
I love it.
Right.
Well, that's what I'd love to do because when our guests come on, I'd love to give you the card so that you can either keep it for yourself or pass it along. But in this case, I'll send you two. That way you can
Oh,
keep one for you
thank
and
you.
pass it along to someone else.
That's not why I said that, but thank you very
I
much.
know, but it's my pleasure to do it. It comes back to me.
And
The
you
joy.
designed those, right?
Yeah, I work with I get ideas using the stamps and different sentiments, but yeah, it's fun. It's
They're beautiful.
thank you very much
That
for
was one
that.
of the hardest things getting ready for this podcast was choosing. When you asked
Which
me to
one?
choose, they're so beautiful.
Oh, well, thank you so much for coming on the show and playing with me a little bit longer and sharing so much of the insights you have into this topic and all the research you did to prep for that event. I was just taken, and I know you love doing the research as I do. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Yo. It's a pleasure.
Great. Thank you for listening today, and we sure hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please leave a comment wherever you listen to your podcasts. Tell a friend about us. Join our public Facebook group, Girl Take the Lead, or visit our website, girltaketheleadpod.com. We also have a YouTube channel where your subscription would be appreciated. Once you're on YouTube, search at Girl Take the Lead. And we're expanded to YouTube Music, where you can find a video of this episode and you can also find a video on Spotify. Here are 3 episode takeaways. 1. We may not want to get rid of loneliness. If we never experience sadness or loneliness, how will we experience joy? It's also a way to kick ourselves into gear and take some action when we notice it. It's chronic loneliness we need to watch for. 2, social media isn't all bad, but it may not be as meaningful to some of us as a way to connect with others. It's the choices we make. While the social tools can assist us in connecting and being convenient and fast, we have the choice to connect this way or pick up the phone or make a plan to visit someone. 3, there are a number of misconceptions around loneliness, like quantity matters. To feel lonely isn't normal. We should feel shameful if we get lonely. Loneliness only happens to old people, and introverts are lonelier than extroverts. We all need some alone time to recharge. Friendship is a key way to address loneliness, but it's good to assess, plan, and take action when choosing friends. We've also been asking our guests to go to our card and gift store at girltaketheleadpod.com/shop to tell us about which items that spoke the most to them. And Ziem picked the Lotus Heart with a sentiment that reads, I carry your heart with me. I carry it in my heart, by E. E. Cummings. So check out Ziem's choice and see our newest collection of holiday cards. Our next episode will be a soundbite, which is a shorter episode, and will feature our book gift list, which will be helpful during this gift giving time of the year, either for yourself or others. Talk to you soon. Bye.